It's very easy in this modern world to get this sense of dissatisfaction. It's very easy for a generation to come to actually look at the generation there and blame them. And it's very easy to constantly call for change. But what does that mean? In the world of business, this is a constant threat and challenge. All of you will have views about how business has let down society, has let you down, has let your friends down. But what are we to do about it? Do we wait for the next generation of business leaders to take over these organizations? Do we wait for new organizations to be the new influences in business? And by the way, what does meaningful change really mean? Now, to my view, we cannot wait for a new generation. It is too important to actually harness the discipline, the resources that are available to business with the needs of society. And the current generations have a role to play. But what we need to do is find something that connects generations, challenges them to the same goals, and reconnects to business and society. But that requires a different perspective. These are root bridges, living bridges in India, looking at a different way to do things. Rather than cutting down the forests and making the planks and building the bridges that we want, that we're in control of, is taking more time with living things to grow them closer together, taking time and making sure they actually serve the purpose of the wider society. Yes, it does take more time. It does take more discipline. It does take more training, but it lasts for generations. As long as the bridge continues to live, it can last for generations. It's not put up, abandoned, and rots. And this is the sort of thinking we need to bring to take control and make some action, rather than complain about the change or wait for the change. But what have we got that can make such a profound difference as the wonder of this living bridge? And the answer, quite frankly, is very simple. It's every single person in this room and everyone who's watching. It's the power of the human person. But we have to ask ourselves some very fundamental questions. What is our view of the human person, or bias? Does that actually affect behaviours? And if it does, can we make true, memorable, sustainable change from what we know? And that's what I want to explore with you tonight. First of all, what's your view of the human person? Now, this is a complex subject, and I'm not going to explore it in detail at Heythrop, because there's lots of brilliant thinkers here. I want to reduce it to two simple models that actually we can challenge people with. One is, the view of the human person is that we are predominantly self-interested self-maximizers. A great body of thought that goes around that, actually the Homo economicus, so beloved of economists. So great credibility. But what does it actually mean in practice? It actually means that we've taken the view of the person that we are out for our self-interest. Now, is that bad? Look at the benefits. If this is a predictable model, I can actually put in systems that regulate behavior. I have the control. If I only have to care about myself, I can take immediate action. I can do things at speed. And I'm backed up by a whole raft of teaching around what business is for and what business leaders should do. Imagine the law: predictability, speed, control, credibility. That is the law of self-interest, self-maximizing. And that's why it is a dominant view in many ways of thinking. There is an alternative. And this alternative also has impressive provenance from philosophy, through wisdom traditions, and emerging behavioral science and neuroscience about who the human person actually is. And what are the attractions of this? Maybe doing things where there is much more chance of self-fulfillment, because I'm building relationships, and as social beings, that's what humans seek, and that's where we get our self-fulfillment. Secondly, forming relationships from which there is more likelihood to be breakthrough innovation and breakthrough ideas. And finally, perhaps making decisions that I can explain to my work colleague and go home and explain to my friends and family and get the same reaction. So that is the attraction of the other model. Now, it's not right, wrong. And who is the right judge? Well, I've got an audience here, so let's test. Put your hands up if you believe that the human person is predominantly self-interested. Yeah, good show. Also, put up your hands if you think to be successful in business, you need to be predominantly self-interested. That's interesting, because there's fewer people. So business is not the hotbed of self-interest that some people say. And finally, put your hands up with the obvious question is, which of you in this room believe that you are predominantly self-interested? There's a wonderful sense of honesty in this room. And actually, it's what we see when we talk to business leaders, is actually finding this confusion that in reality what they say to us is both act at the same time. When we're in fear, be it through losing our jobs, or worried about what I'm doing, or making mistakes, I tend to be in the self-preservation model, self-interest. But actually, when I'm inspired to be in groups and co-create, I can actually move to another model, where actually I'm working collaborative, I'm creating great ideas, I feel good about what I do, and I feel good about telling people who I work for and what I do. But this is not easy. And quite frankly, does it make any difference? If I have this view or this bias, will it make any difference to me or anyone else? Well, the answer is it seems to, and I want to look at two aspects. One is the theory behind this, and two is the practice. The theory. This is Sumatra Ghoshal, business school professor who's no longer with us. But in 2005, he published a paper, actually was published after his death with the help of his son, his secretary and his research student, that actually said is that bad management theory was driving out good management practices. And what he was calling out to the business school profession, of which he was part, is that we need to stand up and take responsibility for some of the corporate actions that, quite frankly, have been done in our name, from our teaching and our view, the gloomy view, that a person is self-interested, and from that flows economic modelling, business school teaching, and management theory. A very brave stance to call out the fundamental thing that actually social sciences actually can drive behaviours. If I make the science and a bad theory the practice, and people start practicing it, suddenly that becomes the reality. And that's what he was calling out, that this is what was happening. These theories were driving self-interested behaviour. In fact, he went even further. He said the danger of this mechanistic, individualistic, gloomy view of the world is it drives out hope, it drives out any sense of moral or ethical responsibility, and it also drives out common good sense of who the human person is. So that's what he called out in theory, someone inside the profession having the courage to reflect that having hit upon a model and not saying what it was and driving off it, they were driving behaviours that absolutely put centre in the world of business that we were self-interested, self-maximisers. And that causes tension in the real world, because that's not the way people were feeling. Now, that's the theory, and that's grand. But what about the practice? The work we do, we actually talk to businesses about how to be a force for good in society. And we ask them the question, what is your view of the human person? Now, that can be a tricky conversation in the boardroom. It's none of your business, and why does it matter? So these are tricky conversations, but what I want to take you through is a sort of workshop experience we do to self-reveal what is going on. We ask people to assume people are self-interested. What are the consequences, particularly with customers? You don't need to read this. We basically say, what are the customer attributes if you believe they're self-interested? They'll say they're not loyal, all they care about is price, They take no responsibility for their decisions. They will move on as soon as there's a better deal, and they don't want a relationship with us. That is our view if they're self-interested. So that's very interesting. That sounds quite accurate of a selfish person. What is your view of the ideal customer? Well, it's quite clear. What we want is the ideal customers. They're loyal, they're advocates, they're not overly price sensitive. They actually help us create the new products, and they stay with us for the long term. So immediately, they have created a dilemma. This is what we want, but here is our bias. And guess what happens next? What if I believe this is how people are, not how I want them to be? How would I react to take first mover advantage? Let me tell you. If they're not going to be loyal, why should I look after them? Let me pursue the next customer, not look after the old one. If they don't want a relationship, why don't I let them serve themselves? And why don't I let technology do the work? And then they begin to realize this is the paradigm we've created. Our behaviours are influencing others' behaviours, and that is not the person we want to be. It's not the person we believe we want to be as customers. It's not the person we want to be, full stop. And cross out the word customer and put in employee and put in community and put in regulator, and you'll end up with the same result. This is serious stuff that people need to actually change. But can they? And their answer is, yes, you can. If you do take the view that there is a different, more wholesome, fuller way, what do? You send signals that that's what you're looking for, it's what you appreciate, and it's what you nurture. Julia, one of my friends and colleagues, she's always rushing around, and therefore she keeps losing things, particularly her wallet. Last year, she lost her wallet 3 times. Twice, someone phoned her up and said, "We've got your wallet, can we return it to you?" Why did that happen? Because in her wallet, she leaves her business card. So what she enabled someone to do is act on the instincts they wanted because they had the signal and a means to do it. And that's what we believe can happen and will happen in your relationships and in business if we send signals. And the way businesses can do this is around something we will call proper purpose. It's signaling to people inside the organisation and outside why they exist. Purpose is not what they do, it's why they exist. And just as importantly, why you should care as an employee or potential employee, as a customer or potential customer, as a community where I want to base my factories or my telephone mast. Why should they care? And you can only engender that if you go back to the basics of creating relationships, creating friendships, is showing that you dignify and respect someone, and showing that you want them to co-create with you something that they can benefit from, but something they can create and others can benefit. So the power of purpose in organisations is transformative. But remember, it's a difficult journey. So how do I stay on the journey? I stay on the journey by asking my relationships to hold me to my authenticity of the why that inspires me to be part of that collective adventure as an employee, a customer, a supplier, a community. And that's hugely important to allow people to come into themselves and make that choice where Julia has given them another card and said, you can do this if you want to, and I will help you. And within the organisation, rather than command and control, moving more to self-management, genuinely listening to suppliers and co-creating. And this stuff really works and is now. A month ago, I was facilitating a meeting of mining industry executives. They're a tough bunch. You ask them, what is your view of the human person? And to their credit, they went through the same exercise and realised they need to change as they want to change from being an extraction industry to a proper development industry, where there is long-term benefit to all stakeholders. Last week, I was with the CEO of what is now a healthcare company, but we talked about the human being. He said, that reminds me, at my last job in the drinks industry, selling to wholesalers, business to business, we brought our sales teams together and we asked them what was going on with their relationships. And after a while of digging, where we got to, Loughlin, was the same place you're asking us now, is we had an internal bias around the behaviour of our customers. We thought they were out for themselves and we had to protect ourselves. And we had to change. And they did. And they had 5 years of the best growth they've ever had. This morning, I was at a meeting of a think tank that is trying to look at the consequences of a diminishing state and the role of business and the third sector in actually helping people be themselves. And what we were talking about there is, what is the role of each of these organisations, be they political, be they business, be they third sector, in making a person whole, in making them self-fulfilled, and not just solving the obvious problems they present us. This is real and now. This is something that you can do about. All generations can do something about if we have this common honesty to ask ourselves, what is our internal prejudice and bias about ourselves and others? Can I change it because my behaviours will influence? And can I influence them for good? We can do it. We can take this different perspective to create some things that grow towards each other and are not manufactured and pushed together. Something that's in each of us. And the wonder of these root bridges can be recreated by each of you challenging yourselves and the businesses you operate with as customers, as potential employees, as current employees, as citizens, as members of communities, to challenge them around these questions. Where is your Julia card that tells me why you exist and why I should care? And I will challenge and support you on that. To my mind, this is where we can be and be the wonder of the human bridge together. Thank you.